I'm the moderator of the Fairfield RTM. I will now call to order the July 10th, 2025 special meeting of the town of Fairfield. Will the clerk take the roll?
Ken Astorita. Peter Britton. Melissa Longo. Brooks Baracino. Tara Cook Littman. Megan McCloat. Dave Rock. Chris Shea. Bob Elwanger. Mike Hardigan. Jeff Steele. Cindy Waldron. Laura Carson. Michelle McCabe. Marcy Spalier. Liz Esma. Josh Garskoff. Kristen O'Neill. Sharon Pastilli. Jay Wolk. Rob Blanchard. Nancy Donnie. Eric Druniak. Alex Ocampo.
Here.
Steve Barretts. Lori Galdenzi. John Kuhn. Scott Nickel.
Here.
Scott Nickel. Lenny Brayman. Chris Carroll. Colin Colburn. Christine Ludwizak. Drew Georgiadis.
Yes.
Lisa Havey. Mark McDermott.
Here.
Karen Wackerman. Matt Ambrose. Justin Contrado. Margaret Horton. Pierre Ratsky.
Thank you. Let's stand for the pledge and we'll remain standing just to give a moment of silence for good wishes to our first selectman, Gerber, in his healing, and to his family in good healing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to agenda item 2, public hearing pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 8-169 II on whether the town of Fairfield should adopt a proposed resolution to join the Connecticut Municipal Development Authority. Before I pass off my podium, I will remind members of the RTM and members of the public that this is a public hearing. RTM members have been provided with information and the opportunity to ask questions regarding joining the Connecticut Municipal Development Authority at our June meetings, and will additionally have opportunities to ask questions at our July 21st meeting and provide comments at our meeting on July 28th, where the RTM will vote whether to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a memorandum of agreement or other similar agreements with the authority. This hearing is for the benefit of the public to hear more about this and offer their comments. Public comment will additionally be accepted on July 28th. I'm now going to invite one of the lead sponsors, RTM member Colin Colburn, District 8, up to introduce the other presenting participants for this hearing and start the presentation. Representative Colburn.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. I am Colin Colburn. I am one of the co-sponsors on this resolution. Tonight, we have a couple of guests joining us who are going to be able to do some commentary and some answering of questions. So it's myself, Michelle McCabe, my fellow co-sponsor on this resolution. We have David Corris, who's the Executive Director of Connecticut Municipal Development Authority. We have Emmeline Harrigan, who's the Planning Director for the town. We have Mark Barnhart, who is the Director of Community and Economic Development for the town. And we have our Acting First Selectman, Christine Vitale. I do have a couple of comments that I'd like to make before I pass it over to David. I've been incredibly frustrated by how development has unfolded in our town. Our town has been disproportionately and negatively affected by a statute that we all know too well, 830G. Projects that are masked as unaffordable housing have felt oversized and inconsistent with the character of our town. As a third-generation Fairfielder, I share the concern, and I think I speak on behalf of both my family and many community members when I say that we are losing control to developers who see Fairfield as the next Stanford. We all should be concerned about things like unchecked growth, rising traffic, and pressure on our schools and our aging infrastructure. So why am I supporting this resolution? Because we need to take back control, and we need to be proactive, and we need to be planful in how Fairfield grows. I see the Connecticut Municipal Development Authority as a tool in our toolbox going forward in order to do that. A couple of specific things that I'd like to call out, and then I'm going to have David give more specifics. CMDA can help us move forward stalled developments that we have already approved. I think this is actually very important because getting those buildings built will help ease speculative pressure. That is, it will remove outside forces from flooding us with increased development. Second is that this resolution does not give up our zoning authority. That is incredibly important to me, and I made sure to confirm that multiple times. We still control our zoning laws. And I also want to add, with a 4-year 830G moratorium that we are in, we have an incredible window to guide development on our terms. CMDA gives us tools to plan proactively, not just respond to the mandates from the state that we've had to deal with for so long. And important to note, I think it's important that we continue to evaluate with our POCD that is being drafted how CMDA is going to fit into that POCD going forward. Third is that this is not only about housing. CMDA supports economic development and can help grow our commercial tax base, reducing the property tax burden that we all pay. And CMDA can help fund and support critical studies and initiatives on things like infrastructure, school, and traffic capacity. And that's something that we don't always have the budget to be able to do. And fourth is that CMDA can help us attract local and smaller scale developers. So this would be able to help us be able to build housing that fits into our communities and that feels more consistent with the character of the neighborhoods that they are in. So I support this resolution because I don't want us to be reactive anymore. We can't be flat-footed. We have to start playing offense. And CMDA is a page in our playbook that will help us be able to better protect Fairfield's character and shape the future on our terms. With that, I'm going to pass it over to David.
Thanks so much, Colin, and very well said. I'll echo some of those points and expand a little bit on it. I won't go into the same level of detail that I gave to the RTM last month, so if folks are interested, I certainly encourage. I think they're available on video. Yeah, so
Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry, you have to push the microphone down the entire time to speak.
oh,
I apologize.
Okay, got it. Hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, cheers. I've never encountered that before. Interesting. Okay, well, make sure that I'm staying and paying attention and staying awake. Okay. So what I said was I'm not going to go to the same level of detail that I did in my presentation to the RTM at the June meeting, but I know that that's available online. So if folks want to look into that and see anything that I might not cover today, I do want to be relatively brief because I want to give folks an opportunity to comment. I appreciate Colin's comments and context. I agree with everything that he said. I'll talk just a little bit about what the Municipal Development Authority is, how we're structured, what we're set up to do, what this step in the process means. But first and foremost, we are a quasi-public authority established in state statute, designed, as Colin said, to be a tool to support municipalities in their efforts for downtown revitalization and transit-oriented development. This resolution that's before the RTM now is just the first step of several. It is the opt-in step, and that is a very important one because it gives us the indication that Fairfield is a place where we can start to spend the time and energy to work with you all. There's a lot of municipalities around the state. By raising your hand, it's a way for us to prioritize our resources and to begin to roll up our sleeves and work together to support you in achieving your goals and vision. As Colin said again, you know, it's very clear to note, and I want to emphasize, there is no ceding of local control. There is no usurpation of zoning authority. The entire land use regulatory process remains exactly as it is today, completely within local control. We cannot tell you to do anything or force you to do anything that you don't want to do. If we do move through this step and ultimately to a memorandum of understanding, and so after there's a after there's an opt-in resolution, we do look at your zoning and determine whether or not it's in compliance with our objectives. We may be able to certify your zoning as is. I think some of your zoning is already probably at a state where we would be able to check that box. If it's not, and we have recommendations, again, they are fully within the town's discretion whether or not to adopt those recommendations. If you do adopt those recommendations and we do move on to the next step, we can then invest in a limited geography within your municipality. We can invest within a half a mile of a rail station, or we can invest within a downtown. We are statutorily enabled to fund technical assistance like the planning support that was mentioned earlier. We can fund transit-oriented development, which is a mixture of uses within walking distance of a rail station designed to support ridership. We can fund housing. We can fund building demolition or rehabilitation, or we can fund development or redevelopment. And so that's a pretty broad categorization that enables us to support the kind of infrastructure that might be needed to help an area of town reach your development goals. Those projects can be applied to us from the town for infrastructure, or developers can apply directly to us for gap financing. And as was again mentioned earlier, there may be projects that have already received zoning approval, projects that are entitled, as there are throughout the state. We can be a financing mechanism to help bring those projects to construction and bring them to fruition. We cannot fund a project that has not been locally approved. You cannot use our funding or a relationship with us to bypass the local regulatory process. I think a couple other things that I would mention that I get questions about often, which may come up today. We don't have a specific affordability requirement. We can fund a range of housing options. We can fund market rate. We can fund affordable. We can fund workforce. Again, as was mentioned earlier, we can fund commercial development. We, as I was asked a question when I was here in June that I'll reiterate now, we would not fund an 830G development. We would only fund developments that are proposed in accordance with your zoning. I think those are the most important points that I want to make. I'm sure that other details will come up throughout the process, but I think the overarching thing that I want to make sure is clear is we are an implementation tool that municipalities can leverage to help achieve your development objectives. We do not have a preconceived notion of what type of development should happen in your community. We don't have the ability to allow anything that you don't otherwise allow, but we can be a very valuable mechanism for infrastructure support, technical assistance, and then ultimately gap financing that will help developers bring their projects to completion. And I think that concludes my remarks, and I know I and others will be here to answer any questions that come up during public comment.
Thank you. We're now going to begin to take public comment. I'm going to ask everyone in person to form a line next to the podium over there. When you are at the podium, please state your name and your address. After members of the public who are in person have been given the opportunity to speak, I will move to online members of the public who place their name in the chat box asking to be recognized. We can't see you if you raise your hand, so you do need to place your name in the chat box. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and then we will have anyone on the panel here respond appropriately. Thank you. Our first gentleman can begin by stating your name and your address. Thank you. And you don't have to hold that one down. That's live.
Hi, my name is Matthew Halleck. I live at 6 Somerville Street here in Fairfield. for about 30 years, married, raised my kids here, everything. So I have to read it because my memory is shot. Good evening. My name is Matthew. I appreciate the CMDA coming here tonight, but to be honest, the plan they're presenting is based on foundation of willful negligence, and it is a direct threat to the health and safety of our community. The entire premise of their high-density, transit-oriented model is a fantasy that ignores the reality of a post-COVID work life. That's not the most dangerous part. The most dangerous part that a lot of this is on flawed maps. If you look through the POCD and you do a detailed audit of it, there's a lot of, for starters, the flood maps are all wrong. They just look at one tiny little corner down by South Pine Creek as being in the flood zone. And it's a lot more, this is in the flood zone, and all of this is in the flood zone. And even FEMA has pulled back, and insurance companies are not insuring anymore. So we can't build in these flood zones. You can't get insurance from it. It's negligent to do that. And we have to update the maps. That includes Route 1. That includes the entire Black Rock area over there, which was eliminated and replaced with the Commerce Drive neighborhood. That is a fake neighborhood. And if you look on the maps, they literally eliminated Black Rock as a neighborhood in Fairfield. That needs to be restored. But it raises a critical question, and we are standing here on the heels of a tremendous victory that happened last week when the governor vetoed 5002. That was a stomach punch to the entire building and development industry that they never saw coming. And that rally and that support to defeat that was led primarily by women, and Fairfield took the lead, and also New Canaan and Greenwich. And I think we should continue to take the lead. This is, if you really look at this, what's being done here, it is a total loss of control. We have to write zoning law that meets their specifications, and then they're going to hook us up with their developers to find a building that comes in here. We don't need any of that. And it's all built on just building, and they talk about housing, and it's really not about that. It's just building. And we're built on homes around here, not housing. We're here in Tunxis. And you got to remember, Tunxis, that's the DNA of Fairfield, all right? It's not the Gold Coast and suburban and all that. It's the people in the 1800s who worked in the mills and everything in Bridgeport and were able to buy their own homes in Tunxis. And right here, that's the real roots of what Fairfield is all about, and it's home ownership. And so
Thank
to
you,
give
sir. I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Thank you very much. I have to go anyway. Thank you. Is anybody?
Is there anybody that wants to respond to any of that? Some of that was just comment, so,
Okay. Thank you all.
Mr. Corris, you got to come on up here, unfortunately.
I just want to put on the record, the gentleman stated CMDA this, CMDA that, and then said they created the flood maps. I just want to put on the record that we do not create any flood maps, and we have not done any mapping or planning yet for the town of Fairfield.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. Our next person, if you state your name and your address.
Sure. I am Stephen Rosado, 85 Old Stratfield Road. I'm here as the Economic Development Commission for the town of Fairfield, the chairman. And just want to endorse the CMDA and thank David, who actually came and presented to us earlier this year. And I reviewed last week's video meeting and just appreciate all the RTM asking good questions, which I thought were well-funded and or well-founded in the interest of the town. And a lot of stuff was already stated, so I'll just be quick. Just pointing out, the long view of the CMDA will help mitigate some of the challenges we have with 830G, as well as maybe a reintroduction or reformatting of the 5002 bill that was defeated last week. I'm sure it will come back to us, but it unlocks funding opportunity. It creates pathways for success for grants and bonding that were otherwise unavailable to us, and it keeps us competitive as a town with other municipalities, as well as opening up partnerships with other municipalities. I think it's important for the town. Sometimes things look too good to be true, but I think there's been a lot of talk about all the concerns, and they seem to be addressed at every turn. The other expression is you don't look a gift horse in the mouth, and I think this is something that we should take advantage of while we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, responses? Okay, the next person, if you want to come up and state your name and address.
Yeah, Carol Pontrilli, Partridge Lane. I'm not clear. Is this, can I ask questions or am I only making comments?
You can ask questions as well, and then they'll respond
Oh,
after you begin
okay,
talking, yeah.
Okay, well, my first question is, when I don't know, you mentioned tools. I don't know did you define any of those tools?
I'm gonna have you speak for your, like, ask
Okay,
all your questions,
Okay,
and then
that's
they'll
all right,
answer,
That's
yeah.
the first one about the tools. Hold on, I wrote some down, hold on. Tools, and then, I don't understand how does this actually prevent what I'll call double dipping? I mean, you're gonna build development, and an 830G isn't going away. There's a moratorium for a while. I just would imagine you might just have actually double development because of that. I don't understand how the two would stop each other. Also, you say this would be like in line with our goals. The POCD, part of it that I've read, I would be curious to know what population size are we going for here in Fairfield? Um, and you mentioned about aligning with our objectives. You said if we're not aligning with your objectives, then you aren't going to be like cooperating. I couldn't quite follow that one. I guess that's enough.
Thank you so much, Mr. Corus.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So in terms of tools, the support that we can bring is technical assistance and planning support. And so helping to fund analysis and engineering, traffic was referenced, better understand the fiscal impact of development. So there's a whole suite of technical support, and then funding for either infrastructure directly to the municipality, or gap financing for development to a developer. With current interest rates and construction costs, there's often a delta between the amount that developers can borrow from a bank and the cost to construct, and so we would fill that gap. So that's the tools question. In terms of 830G, and Colin can jump in here in addition, but I think what he was referencing was you have already enabled a certain amount of development with your zoning in certain areas of town. If that development is built with the inclusionary component of affordable housing, it will help towards your requirements that would ultimately reach the amount that would make you exempt from 830G. And so you have already allowed a certain amount of development that would bring you closer to the 10%, which would ultimately make you exempt. But because the development you've allowed isn't happening, you're further from that target and then subject to 830G.
Yeah, I would just add that my personal view is that we have been so, again, to use my words, disproportionately affected by 830G is partially because we did a poor job planning for years, and we've had a lot of land in our town that has sat, it is aged, nothing has happened to the land, and we all know what has happened since then. Developers have flocked in and seen this is a huge opportunity for me. We still have that land. Specifically for me, why I think this is such a huge opportunity, not only with the 830G moratorium, but all you have to do is go to the Fairfield Blackrock Metro Station. What's around there? Not a whole heck of a lot. So we all know what's coming. I mean, the thing that I think is so important, and I hear the concerns so loudly because of what I said before, which is I have not been happy with the development that's gone on in our town. We do have to face the reality, and it's a pill that is not easy to swallow. Development is not going to stop. If we don't opt into this, it's gonna continue. If we do opt in, it's gonna continue. We have no path. Frankly, we've lost the battle. If the goal has been to cap our population at 60,000, it's not. It's in the back view of our mirror at this point. So my view is that we need to be able to do everything we can to maintain the character of our town and make sure the development that does happens on our terms, and that we have control over that development, which we have really not had for the past several years.
Thanks, Colin. So your third question was about your plan of conservation and development, which I can't speak to. And then I will address your fourth question. So I'd alluded to kind of alignment. And so there is a step in the process where we look at your zoning, again, only in limited areas of the town, within half a mile of some or all of the train stations within the downtown, wherever we're directed in consultation with the town. And our statutory obligation, and this will sound a little subjective, is to certify whether or not that zoning is likely to substantially increase the number of housing units. I tell every community that I work with to not pay a lot of attention to the word substantial. It's incredibly subjective. If you're allowing multifamily housing near your train station, it is going to be substantial. The more important word is likely. Is your zoning designed to deliver the type of development that your plan calls for? Or will it require a lot of back and forth? And so in some instances, we might have a recommendation about how to make your zoning more likely to result in the type of development that that area of your plan calls for. If we have those recommendations, it is up to the local zoning commission whether or not to adopt them. If we have those recommendations, then continuing on and accessing our funding would be contingent on making those changes. But you don't have to make those changes. And I can't say right now definitively whether or not we would have recommendations. In fact, I could say with a high level of likelihood, we would not have recommendations around Fairfield Blackrock. So there's not an inevitable recommendation. And even if we have it, it is at the town's discretion whether or not to take those recommendations to continue down the process.
Thank you. Anyone else on the panel want to speak? Okay, I'm going to call the next person up. Please state your name and address. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Meyer, and I live at 167 Churchill Road. A proud graduate of Roger Ludlow High School class of 1985, so I've been in Fairfield for a long time. I'm a local realtor, and I love selling the town of Fairfield. I get emotional, so I'm going to let you know that if I start to choke up, it's because I love this town. Our town has sadly been at the hands of a statute called 8-30G. It has ruined neighborhoods. Your townspeople have had to chip in to hire an attorney to fight the developers in the state of Connecticut. This should not be something that we as taxpayers have to do. It's not fair to us. We live here, we pay taxes here, and I don't mean to, belittle your plan, but the words scare me. The word statute, the word quasi-public, the word, giving money to developers. What about the neighborhoods that the town isn't helping the neighborhoods that have been fighting these developers that are coming through and slapping us in the face with these developments because they can? Again, this is a statute that is not going to protect the town of Fairfield. I agree with you. We have not planned. We have no architectural surveys. We don't have any planning, any architecture cohesiveness. And we as residents need to pull together and do the right thing for our community. And allowing someone from Hartford to come down that's getting paid by someone to let us possibly, go into this, because the towns that have gone through, that have agreed to do this are Naugatuck, Derby, Bridgeport, Enfield, Manchester, New Haven, New London, Seymour, Torrington, Waterbury, Danbury, Norwich, Rocky Hill, New Britain, and Old Saybrook. I feel that Fairfield can do so much better and not be attracted by the dollar signs. We need to protect our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corris.
Yeah, so I'll be brief. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I will say it. I went to Fairfield High School too, right? So I care about the town too. So I'm not coming.
Don't pay taxes here for that.
Yeah, okay, fine. I lived here for 18 years. Listen, I don't know why you'd be scared of the word statute. It's just another word for law. I don't know why you'd be scared of the word quasi-public authority. It's just another word for an entity that's empowered and created through state law. Exactly what you're asking for, what you're looking for. You just said you don't have the plans, we don't have the drawings, we don't have the vision for what we want for the future of a community. That's exactly what we're designed to help you achieve. You mentioned most of the communities that have opted in since that list. New Britain and Bristol and Plymouth have also come on board, and many others are in the process of doing so. They're all so incredibly different. Rocky Hill, Old Saybrook, Bridgeport, Manchester. But what they have in common is exactly the point that you raised. They want technical support and resources to better craft a vision for their future and then implement it. That is all we are designed to do, to be a tool to help you delineate and deliver on your vision for the areas around your train stations and in your downtowns. And I hope to have the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll take our next member from the public. Please state your name and your address.
Hi, good evening. I'm Lauren O'Brien. I'm a 25-year Fairfield resident.
Mr. Bryan, if you speak a little
Oh.
closer to the microphone so everyone can hear. Thank you.
Good evening. Is that better? Nobody ever accused me of not being loud enough. Some of you know me. I'm Lauren O'Brien. I'm a town resident and Fairfield homeowner for 25 years. I urge you, our elected legislative representatives, to use caution before making any decisions whether or not to opt in. There is no rush. There should be no urgency. This issue, lack of affordable housing, did not happen overnight, and it will not be fixed by Tuesday, as the Irish say. It will not be fixed in the best interest of the town, its residents, and homeowners by rushing in to what I feel is a bad plan that could be improved. As has been repeated multiple times, the towns that have opted in, I'm not surprised. I think they need a lot of help, and that's why they've opted in. Naugatuck, Derby, New London, Waterbury, Bridgeport, Norwalk, kind of all makes sense to me. Forgive me, because better it should be done than it should be perfect. I threw this together about an hour ago. You know, if you guys vote to join, we're going to have to propose a housing growth zone. And again, substantially, that concerns me, substantially increase the production of new dwelling units necessary to meet the housing demand within the region. Substantially more than the 1,300 units that we've approved, but we haven't built, the effects of which have not been felt or studied. I'm just going to hit on different things. Reducing the TPZ review to one public hearing within 30 days after an application is filed, and requiring, and this is going to be difficult, concurrent approval by the Water Pollution Control Authority, Conservation Wetlands, Historic District Commission. It sounds like a recipe for disaster. Things are just going to have to be slammed through to meet a deadline, but not in the best interest of the town. And the next big question is, where is the TPZ in this whole process? And I don't mean employees, and it's nice to see you here. I mean the people that we elected to keep our best interests in mind. Why are they not working hand in hand? From what I could see, looking at meetings real quick, I don't see any involvement in the TPZ on this, and I don't understand why you're voting on it before they've been intricately involved with this body. Okay. Exceedingly concerning to me is the fact that it bothered me at that first fact-finding meeting that we had we're a town, an urban planning firm that was fact-finding, seeing what people wanted. And then that same consultant drafted our new POCD draft. And now the state is using that same firm for this program. Is this was this all pre-planned? Was that the push? I don't begrudge your firm any business. I just I'm concerned that it's pushing us in a direction that maybe not everyone is interested in. I want affordable housing. Please let me state that for the fact. We need affordable housing, but not.
Well,
at
I'm
the-
sorry, if
I'll
you could
wrap it
wrap up. Thank
Not at the
you.
expense of the town and in the town's best interest. My main concern is how are we going to pay for it? How are we
Thank-
going to study traffic? How are we going to study stormwater, parking, everything that's important to us to have a healthy town?
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Bryan. Thank you. Great. Is there anyone else in person that would like to come up and speak? Oh, I'm sorry, Representative McCabe wants to respond to that.
I thank you for your comment. I think that there actually might be a few of us that want to address some of the concerns that you raised. I just want to be very clear about what the role of the RTM is in this piece of the process. No, I'm so sorry. What I said was what the role of the RTM is in this process. So what the resolution means. We are not giving the town authority to actually join and to sign some agreement with the CMDA. We are giving the town and relevant bodies permission to start the process, to have those conversations, to look at the zoning, to engage the TPZ, et cetera, ahead of signing any agreement with CMDA that actually would go before the Board of Selectmen for consideration. So I just did want to make sure that that was clear. I imagine that some of the other presenters will address some of the issues that you brought up because they were pieces of a larger part of the statute. So for example, when you referenced rapid process with the TPZ, that is not a requirement of this particular ability to join. So what I will do now is I know that there are other presenters that will address some of the other concerns that you raised.
Thank you, Mr. Kors.
Yeah, thank you. And I think Representative answered some of mine, and I know Emmeline is going to take some. The only one that I'll touch on, you referenced affordable housing multiple times. There is no reference to affordable housing in the statute that governs the Municipal Development Authority. It is not a requirement of our engagement with municipalities, and we are not a private firm. We're a governmental. It doesn't have any reference in our statute. I know you keep referencing 830G and affordable housing. That's
I'm sorry, if members of the public that have spoken at the podium, please refrain from speaking out. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to call Ms. Harrigan up. She's our zoning director. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I just wanted to speak to the pending plan of conservation and development, which identifies certain proposals to study. And I think that joining this program and having the opportunity to delve deeper into some of the proposals that are pending within the POCD is going to be really advantageous to the town to understand, I think, some of the common things that come up, such as traffic impacts of making these zoning revisions, how we can better improve the public realm as it interfaces potential developments, providing more walkability, more multimodal activity. So I think that this is an opportunity. I will say around the Fairfield Blackrock train station, as you've seen by the development that's occurred within the last 8 years, that zoning already exists to promote a mixed use environment on what was brownfields, which was demolished factories that employed 6,000 people. So we already have some of, I think, the zoning that would meet the requirements in place. And even in the downtown area, we permit mixed use development. I think one of the things that we've frankly been talking about is, some of the automotive oriented development where you've got parking lots in front of buildings really is disruptive to the pedestrian environment in our downtown. And that's something that we'd really like to take a look at in terms of making it a better, safer pedestrian environment. So I think that there is quite a bit of opportunity where if we didn't join this, we'd have to chase planning dollars somewhere else to be able to perform, some of this planning work, which I think is really crucial for how we move redevelopment forward in Fairfield.
Thank you. Anyone else from the panel that would like to speak? Thank you. Any other members of the public that have not spoken? Thank you. Just state your name and your address.
Hi, good evening. My name's Alyssa Kent. I live at 186 White Oak Road. I'm a 17-year resident of Fairfield, raising my 3 kids here. I'm an architect, I'm a real estate developer, I'm a commissioner on the WPCA, and I'm a major advocate for middle housing and middle housing reform here in Fairfield. I'd love to be building some someday, but the current zoning practices, the red tape and processes that to go through that are not possible for small developers. And it really restricts making incremental small development possible here in our town. So I'm mostly interested in this program for 2 reasons. That middle housing, which I think is a huge need here in town to meet our goals, meet affordability, keep things that feel right in our town, the types of developments we really want to see. Second is development near Black Rock train station. There's a reason that we have not progressed as quickly in development with more significant size development in that area. And it's likely because of planning and gap funding and lots of other things that could be helped by this program. And I recognize that we've had a lot of units recently approved here in town. I want this body to really understand that most likely all of those are not going to be built. We are not headed for a moratorium in 4 years, potentially. Those projects need to be breaking ground next year in order to us feel really comfortable that we're going to hit a moratorium again. So now is the time to be using and advocating for the tools that we need to plan smart and strategic in our town to meet the goals in the way that we want to meet them. Lastly, we have been slower than many of us would like to see in planning advancement. This type of partnership in conjunction with the POCD can really help propel us as a town to have the tough conversations, to talk about really what do we want to see in our town? How are we going to make progress towards our goals in a way that brings all different types of people with all different types of opinions together on something that we feel good about? And this is exactly the type of money that doesn't just fall from the sky, and the opportunity and the tools and the resources to do those things. And the tough conversations, there will be tough conversations if we go into this at the TPZ level about what are the planning and zoning changes that we want to make in town that are going to meet the requirements of the authority so that we can come together and propel our town forward in a really smart way. This isn't a loss of local control. It's about using our local control more effectively. And we can't say that we want local control.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask you to wrap it.
Yep. We can't say that we want local control and then refuse every tool that we are offered for smart and equitable growth. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on the panel would like to address that? Okay, thank you. Any other members from the public that are present that would like to speak? I can always come back to you guys after I go through the long list online. I'm going to start online, calling the members online. I have a list. They will unmute you. Ideally, you have video on so we can see you. Please state your name and address. And up first is Alexis Harrison.
Sorry, for some reason I cannot disable my video, so you won't be able to see my pretty face.
That's okay.
But again, I wanted to, I'm actually a former member of the art team. I was on the art team for many years, so really appreciate what you all do. I'm now a member of the zoning commission. First of all, I wanted to thank Mr. Corus for being here. What you said was very helpful, and I think there are a lot of great tools here with CMDA. I am very disappointed that there really isn't much of an affordability threshold in the program. There were comments earlier in the evening that said this will help us get under from 830G. I don't believe that is true because Fairfield is, in most towns, are always going to be subject to 830G unless we achieve 10% of our housing stock be deemed affordable. And I don't really see that happening. I think we've even had town officials state that we'll never get to 10%. So I believe that 830G, unfortunately, will still be there. It is a good tool, but sometimes not always used in the best interest of our neighborhoods. I heard comments that we don't plan. We absolutely do plan. I've been on the commission for 4 years, and we're actually in the process of adopting our next POCD, which Ms. Harrigan mentioned tonight. Hope you all participate and get and provide that feedback because you know your neighborhood's best. But we do plan, but we're also subject to state laws that we have to adhere to. I'm on the P&Z, as I mentioned. We haven't been invited to provide any input whatsoever. Quite frankly, my commission was not even notified of CMDA participation or possible participation until I read about it. So I find that disappointing because I think we need to have more collaboration. We need to have collaboration across all of our boards and commissions, quite frankly, because a lot of us do feed into each other, whether it's financing with as it relates to zoning and education and a number of other things. I also suggest that you guys maybe hold on this until our POCD is concluded, which will be in the November timeframe. We are, as I mentioned, we are adopting that, and we've also done a significant amount of work of planning to encourage multifamily housing in our town. There are new regulations that we've passed in the last few months, and there is also the POCD will also guide us to do more of that. So I think that's a really good thing. At present, there are also probably about 1,300 units that have been approved yet not built. Perhaps that would be great for that gap funding that was talked about tonight. But there's just a lot of development out there that we really haven't felt the implications of. And, you know, we have to think about the bigger picture with school redistricting, you know, stresses on our infrastructure and so much more. So I would really like you guys to just hold a little bit before we move forward with this program, because I do think there are some good aspects here. I think the ordinance could be tweaked a little bit. And I would just also remind you that the TPZ is the sole town body responsible for adopting land use ordinances and zoning applications. I understand that you guys have the statutory authority to join or not join, but let's just make sure that everybody is part of that conversation because I think we all have a lot of important viewpoints and experiences. So I hope you guys collaborate with us in the coming months
Thank you, Ms.
as we bring this.
Harrison.
Thank you again for your time and service. Have a good night.
Thank you. Next up is, oh, I'm sorry, the panel would like to speak.
Thank you, Alexis, for your comments. I just wanted to make a point that the RTM passing this resolution is what is required actually for the TPZ and other town bodies to get involved in this process. That's why we need to vote on the resolution in the first place, because without this vote, we can't engage in the discussions that will end up with potentially the town of Fairfield joining CMDA. We, the RTM, are not voting to join CMDA. We are passing, we are voting to pass a resolution that opens the channel of communication between the town of Fairfield, the appropriate bodies to engage with CMDA, to look at our zoning, to examine which areas of town may or may not be certifiable, for the town to tell CMDA, hey, this is a place that we're interested in, for CMDA to look at it and say, this looks great, or CMDA to look at it and says, well, we would make these recommendations. If those recommendations are made, the TPZ would have to get involved in order to enact them. So it's actually, of all the steps to take, this step for the RTM is the step that allows for what I appreciate hearing from residents in our town and from our elected officials like Ms. Harrison, their interest in doing a deep dive, in doing the work to get this set up in a way that is going to be good for the town of Fairfield.
Any other members from the panel? Thank you. Moving on to our next person who would like to speak, Kathy Braun.
Can you hear me and see me?
We can, thank you.
Okay.
Please
So
state your name and address, I'm sorry.
My name is Catherine Braun. I'm a 6-year member of the Zoning Commission. I was on the RTM also for 3 terms years ago. And I was on FairTV Commission for a while. So I've looked at the statute, and my understanding of how it works is, and I agree with Commissioner Harrison that the TPZ should collaborate with you upfront before you take a vote. You should be fully informed before you vote on whether we should join this or not. Because once you vote, then the first selectman will pick the district, and zoning regulations will have to be part of a proposal given to it used to be called the MRDA, now it's called the CMDA, but the statute still calls it the MRDA. And that authority has the authority, is responsible for approving those regulations. If they don't approve them, then we either have to change them or we don't get the money. This whole thing is about getting some grant money, as far as I know. So the statute to me is very clear. The whole purpose of this program is to substantially increase the production of new dwelling units necessary to meet housing demand within the region. Not sure what that means exactly. Within the region, it's obviously not just within Fairfield, but the criteria that the authority would use to determine if our regulations satisfy that goal include things such as allowing middle housing as of right. That means no public hearing. Okay, and it doesn't really define middle housing. In other parts of the law, middle housing could be any number of things. It could be up to a 9-plex. Without a public hearing, it means people cannot show up. They cannot bring experts. They cannot talk about impact on the local community. Another criteria would be a very short, streamlined time frame to both hold a hearing, one hearing, and then approve it or decide on it after the hearing. And a concurrent process, which is really hard to understand, of WPCA wetlands, which I guess the zoning commission would have to determine. It would be some kind of a joint approval process, also within 30 days of receiving the application, which seems very crunched. Another criteria that the CMDA authority would use to determine if our regs are satisfactory would be if there is no requirement for off-street parking. And another one is 10% to be affordable. So there's no requirement for that. And by the way, we don't have to do that. If we don't do it, we don't get any money. So there's no point in even joining if we don't want to do it. So I feel the zoning commission should be involved on day one to figure out just exactly what we'd be giving up if we did join. And as far as affordability, I think this will make our ratio go down because our ratio doesn't go up very fast anyway when you rely on developers using 830G, which requires 30% affordable. This does not require any affordable, but it's more likely that our regulations would be approved if we require 10% affordable, which is actually less than most of our own inclusionary zoning right now. But the 10% affordable does not get us any closer.
Thank you, Ms. Braun. I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
Okay, so one last thing. There's no funding in the last section of the statute. There's no funding if the authority does not approve our zoning regulations.
Thank you. Any members of the panel? Mr. Corris.
Yeah, thank you for the comments. I'll just address 3 aspects of what you mentioned briefly. Okay, so I think the overarching question, which both you and Ms. Harrison mentioned, is earlier engagement of the Planning and Zoning Commission and other bodies. Let me just be very clear, right? This step that you are considering is raising your hand so that we can dedicate the time and energy to have those conversations. We're not going around the state engaging with planning and zoning commissions and all different boards and bodies in municipalities willy-nilly. We are doing that with the municipalities who raise their hand. If you don't raise your hand, we're not going to spend that time and energy because we got dozens of other municipalities to do that. That is this step. This step is saying, we want you to start talking to staff. We want you to start talking to TPZ. We want you to talk to other people in the community to help us. That's what this step is. So that type of conversation would never occur before this step. And this step does not come with any obligations or commitments. I guess the other point, you mentioned there are a lot of things in the statute, and you used two different terminology. You kind of went back and forth. You said they were the criteria that we would be used, and then you said such as. Criteria is not an accurate term because criteria implies that those are the things that we would require of your zoning. For whatever reason, the statute has the kinds of things that we would consider. None of those things are threshold requirements that we would place on your zoning before engaging with you further. The representative, sure, we would look at things like parking, like approval process, but the things that are in your zoning. And then I guess the final point just around the affordability, I think you were saying that because our statute says that developments could have 10% inclusionary, that would be putting the town backwards because your inclusionary requirement is already more than that. Your rules govern, right? Your zoning governs. If your inclusionary is at 12% now, it'll be at 12% when we work together. So you won't have to go backwards working with us.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak to that? Okay, we're going to move on to our next public speaker online, Mary Elizabeth Halloran. If you get on and say your name and your address.
Hi, my name is Mary Elizabeth Halloran. I have lived in Fairfield here for 32 years. I live at 44 Lindbergh Court, which is involved now with a huge problem around developers trying to take over the quarter-of-acre property around our house. But the reality is, I guess what I would ask everybody is, why is this good for Fairfield? Why is this helpful to us? It's why would we seek local control? The town is already going through so many changes. The TPC is being sued by multiple neighborhoods already. It's because of their unfortunate rulings. Of course, many of the TPC members did not do that, did not agree, but the town is being sued at least 4 or 5 times right now. Why are we doing this? Why are we changing our zoning rules now? It's not helpful to us. Why is this a good time to do it? Let the POCD go through. Let the neighbors have a vote. How come they want to have no parking around our houses anymore? Our lovely quarter-acre properties. It's terrible, and I can't believe that this would be allowed to happen. And I'm fighting it as much as I can. As many people know, I mean, neighbors have 2 lawsuits going on with the town, which is so freaking unfortunate. But the reality is, we have to fight for our neighborhood and to make sure that we are happy and able to live happily in our town. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Would any members of the panel like to speak to this? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to our next member of the public online, Celeste Davis. If you state your name and your address.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
My name is Celeste Davis. I live at 50 Finn Street. I have lived here for 45 years. My husband has lived in Fairfield for 70 years. We, like Mary, are involved in a development in our area, the Byro Street development. I have a few questions. Where do you get your funding from? That's question 1. Question 2, what does the town pay for your services? Question 3, how can you work with all of these towns and do a good job? I also have a question. If building is a mile from the train station, you wouldn't get involved with that? Where are the builders coming from? That's another question that I have. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Mr. Corris.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. I'll try and answer as succinctly as I can. Our funding comes from the state. We have a $90 million capital authorization to invest in our member communities. There is no commitment on behalf of the town. If we get into grant agreements around infrastructure, there might be a cost share, as there is typically a match when you get
We
state.
would need to know what that is.
Excuse me, if public wants you speaking, please don't interrupt. Thank you.
Thank you. So you would obviously know before anything is effectuated. We are way, way ahead of that step in the process right now. How will we do a good job in so many municipalities? We've got robust team and board and consultants, and we're going to do our best to drill down to each community. And I can't read my own note here. Oh, 1 mile from the train station. Yes, that's correct. We cannot operate beyond a half a mile from a train station or outside of a downtown or anywhere in the municipality that is not within the development district boundaries that you ultimately designate.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Okay, now good. All right, anyone else from the panel would like to respond to that? We're going to move on to our next online speaker, James Rule-Mirror. I apologize if that's incorrect. If you just state your name and your address. James Rule-Mirror. Sorry, they're unmuting you. I apologize.
Hi, I'm Jim Rollmeyer. I live at 44 Lindbergh Court. And what I've heard, is very innocuous statements about how they're just going to give, CMDA is going to give us technical support and assistance in that manner. But it's very clear that their entire purpose is to increase development. And the long list of towns that have joined in are towns that are needy and need support and are highly developed and not doing so well. Fairfield does not need support to do their development studies. Fairfield is doing fine in that. And in fact, we have a POCD development regulations in process. And as it was said before, there's no rush to get involved with this. There's no urgency. And we should take our course, see how it goes. We don't need to get involved with this organization that is pro-development and not necessarily in the interests of Fairfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone from the panel want to comment on this? See none, we'll move on to Laura Huddy.
Yes, good evening. Laura Huddy, 32 Westwood Road. I can withdraw because my question was answered regarding the funding.
Thank you for being online, Ms. Huddy. It looks like Mr. Lane was next, but I'm not sure if he's still on. I'm going to move on to Linda Batchelder. Yep, they're going to unmute you soon. I think I just saw you, but Linda Batchelder, sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. She needs to be unmuted. She looks like, there you go. Now you're unmuted.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm
Linda. Just introduce yourself and your address.
Yes, Linda Batchelder, 175 Shoreham Village Drive. And I just have to say that there's a huge loss of trust that the public has in Fairfield. You say state stepping in and everybody is just going to freak out. because we've been dealing with all this development that's been pushed by the 830G. And then we read the new HB 5002 that got vetoed, but we're seeing the state push for high development. And I think that this needs to go out to the community, however you do it. Middle of summer is not the best time, but this has to be explained not just to the RTM, but to the community. Because everybody is, I realize we are going to be developing and everything's going to be changing. And you could say, we've heard about this for a long time, but without a public newspaper, without, it just hasn't been put to the public. What do these letters mean and what is this going to mean for our community? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Yes, Representative Colburn.
Thanks very much. Linda, you said something that I've been thinking as I've been sitting here, which is I'm not a clinical psychologist, but I think our entire town is dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder when it comes to living in a state that has dictated so much of what every municipality does or really can't do because the state requires it. So in that regard, I hear everyone very much when it comes to their concerns, and I have those same concerns. I think there's a second part here that I keep on hearing, that we're kind of conflating what we've seen with 830G in terms of development that has gone on in our town and the overdevelopment that I believe has gone on in our town in certain areas, with the reality that I said before, which is that the development doesn't stop here. It's going to continue. So the question that I asked myself when I was considering being a co-sponsor on this is, are we going to live in the reality that we have and deal with it and figure out a way to make it better and be planful with it? Or do we just say no, 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 no to everything and we end up in a potentially worse situation? So I say that very honestly, very transparently. And I just ask everyone to consider that as well.
Thank you. Any other members from the panel that would like to comment on that? Okay, I think everyone's had an opportunity from the public to speak that wants to. Is there anyone else in person? If you do, just please come to the podium. Anyone else online, please put your name in the chat. Representative McClough, I see you on there, but today is for the members of the public and not for the members of the body. We will have our opportunity at our committee meeting on the 21st and at our regular meeting on the 28th to speak. Is there any other members of the public that would like to speak? Emily Sherwood.
Hi, I'm here. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I just wanted to say, I'm Emily Sherwood, 108 Longdean Road. I've been a resident for 20 years. I'm a single mom. I'm currently yet another resident trying to stop an enormous apartment from going in a few blocks away from my house on Reef Road. I'm really worried about this. Because I don't think everyone knows just exactly how great Fairfield is and all the problems that we've had as far as like when Sandy happened here, I had kayaks going down my street. I don't think being a part of this big group making decisions for Fairfield is a good idea. And I just wanted to throw that out there. I currently can't pull out onto Reef Road due to the overcrowding of the cars, and it's just people who don't live here don't know the problems that we have. So I just wanted to say that I agree with all the other people who are going through it, and I hear you. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Sherwood. Anyone on the panel would like to respond? Another member, seeing none. Eve Burhan is up next. If you, they'll wait to unmute you and then just state your name and your address.
Hi, am I audible?
We can hear you, yes.
Eve Burhenny, 827 Riverside Drive. And thanks for the opportunity and everybody who has spoken. I know it's been said a million times, Fairfield's already seeing how 830G overrides local zoning. I worry, and these are all concerns because I'm far from an expert, but I worry joining CMDA could further dilute local decision-making if the town signs on to development deals brokered or facilitated by the authority. And I understand CMDA requires municipal consent for projects, but once a deal's made, the authority could possibly exercise significant influence over project planning and execution. I just worry we could find ourselves locked into like a large scale development project with less ability to course correct later, especially if political winds change or projects impacts are greater than expected. I understand the CMDA's mandate is statewide economic development and regional revitalization. I assume it means projects that serve state level or metro region objectives over the character or needs of a town like ours. I kind of worry that projects might aim to meet state housing or transit density goals and not Fairfield's infrastructure capacity. Like a TOD near Fairfield Metro or the downtown could be heavily upzoned with little regard for, listen, the traffic down there is already a little bit nightmarish, especially on Umpqua, in addition to environmental impacts. I could be wrong about this, but CMDA projects involve debt financed infrastructure or tax increment financing. So say a revenue projection doesn't pan out, the retail or housing market cools. Could Fairfield be on the hook for repayment or face pressure to subsidize services to a newly developed area? I've got other concerns, but I'll leave off for now. Thanks.
Thank you. We have Mr. Corris here to speak to those questions.
Yeah, I'll just address one and I'll just say it again. It was referenced, I think, a couple times in those comments that, you know, if we are involved in a project, we could somehow make it different as we work with them or make it bigger, or we could rezone. We cannot do any of that. Projects have to be approved through local zoning, period.
Thank you. Any other members of the panel wishing to speak to this? Do we have any other members in public, in person or online that wish to speak? I'm just double checking. Going once, going twice. Okay, tonight's opportunity has ended. However, I would like to remind members of the public that we will be discussing this at our RTM Joint Committee meeting on the 21st of this month, and we will be voting on this agenda item on the 28th of this month. On the 28th, you will again have the opportunity to speak to us regarding this, and as always, you are always able to send us emails with further questions and further comments. Just to make sure I was clear, there's no public comment on the 21st, but there will be questions from members of the RTM on this, and they will be free to ask questions regarding this item. And then on the 28th, both members of the body can offer their comments and further questions, and then members of the public can comment. I thank everyone who's provided comments at tonight's public hearing. I look forward to continuing the conversation on the 21st and the 28th, and this public hearing is now adjourned. Thank you very much.